Okay.
My pants are tight.
Oh.
And I'm mad.
Oh, no.
What's this episode about?
It's about ego death.
Fuck.
That sounds like an ego issue.
Yes.
Your ego is attached to loose pants, and thus you're getting tight pants, getting everything you're afraid of.
Alex, what's the name of this episode?
Ego Apocalypse! Finally recording.
I'm happy we're finally recording because you like to fuss and fiddle and fuss and fiddle.
I wanted to sound good.
Oh my goodness.
How upset would you be if we did this and it didn't record?
It was gonna fucking record.
It did. Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's fine.
Hello everybody. Welcome
Hello.
to Psi.Wave. I am Chase Butice, your host.
I am Alex Coleman, also your host.
Yeah. We got the feminine, we got the masculine.
That's right.
In
duality
and opposition and unity. In paradox,
mm-hmm.
all of it working together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're friends, partners, lovers. Okay.
All those things, cosmic entities here intertwined in a supernova of ecstasy.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. What are we talking about today, Chase?
What are we talking about, Alex? I don't know. I forgot. I don't have the list.
Alex,
no, God! Alex, what are we going to talk about?
But you're the Virgo. You're supposed to have the list.
Okay, I got
you're
it.
the
I'm
list.
Just kidding. It's right here. Just like to fuck with you. Okay, so the first thing we're talking about is we're gonna start talking about astrology just to start the show off, since we're both astrologers.
Right.
Astrologers.
Mm-hmm.
And astrology actually rules the age of Aquarius, right?
Mm-hmm.
And astrology rules Aquarius, and we're in the age of Aquarius, so it's very apropos.
Right. Why is that? Because it's technology.
Yeah, it's cosmic. It's cosmic shit.
That makes sense.
And so we're always going to take the cosmic vibration, the frequency, take a little download from the old charts. And right now we're in a special time because we're in between eclipses, the first set of eclipses of the new 2021 astrological cycle, zodiac cycle.
Right.
And how have you been doing? We're in between them.
Man.
Today, as of the day we're recording, is June 3rd. And the first one was on May 26th.
Well, and last time we talked about major ego death happening, and that has just continued to happen. There's been massive transformation in our lives and ourselves.
Uh-huh.
We've let go of a lot of stuff and changed a lot. I am transforming my back, transforming my body. Chase is transforming her consciousness, her health, all these things, as above, so below.
Not just our bodies, but our spirits.
Our spirits,
our
souls.
Our whole my whole conception of reality is like getting flipped over right now. I feel like I'm like a garbage can that's just like getting flipped over and like shit's coming out. And it's just going all over the place. That's what it feels like this eclipse feels like to me. I'm just like, woo! Where am I going? Oh!
You were tripping out yesterday.
I was tripping yesterday.
You just like completely let go, and it was like, I am in dream. Life isn't real. Life is a dream. And I was like, yes, that's the way I live. But hold on, you don't gotta go too far.
It felt good though.
Mm-hmm. Wandering through the grocery store, grabbing imaginary food items. This isn't real. This is a hologram.
Oh yeah, that's what I said when I was at the grocery store, right? I was like, nothing is real.
You were just in a trance for like the last half of the day, which is great. You needed that. You needed that moment.
So let's talk about the eclipses though. So the first one happened on May 26th, and that was in the sign of Sagittarius. That was 5 degrees Sagittarius. The second one is happening. They're 2 weeks apart. That was a lunar eclipse. And there's a solar eclipse happening on June 10th in the sign of Gemini. It's direct opposite. What's interesting about that is that our north nodes are Gemini and Sagittarius, both opposing.
That is true.
Just realize
both
that.
of our nodes.
Our nodes, bro.
Nodes, bro.
The nodes, bro. We've been talking about the nodes. Let's tell everybody what a node is so that they're hooked in. What's a node, Alex? What's a north node in your astrology chart?
Do you want to know like scientifically what it is, or like what it? Okay, you don't.
Fuck that.
It's something to do with the orbit. It's like the nodes of the orbit. But what it means in astrology, or at least the style of astrology that we're into and we really like, is it's essentially like the karmic pathway in this lifetime. Whereas the south node is where you start out. Maybe it's an accumulation of past life karma, or however you want to look at. It's sort of like where you start, perhaps overdeveloped tendencies that need to be evolved in this lifetime. And the north node is exact opposite side of that axis, and it's where you're moving towards in this lifetime. It may be an area that's more uncomfortable for you, but it's where you're going to find the most fulfillment and growth, is by moving towards that energy and making the conscious choice to do that.
And the nodes are currently in the current nodes in the astrological zodiac at this time are in those signs as well.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What do you think about this whole thing with the north and south nodes currently in? Because the north node, I think, is transiting Gemini at this time.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? What do you think that means for humanity?
Gemini is communication. It's the twins. It's seeing two sides of an issue. It's balancing. There's been a whole lot of leading up to this time. There's been a lot of tension between opposites, right? There's been tension between opposites. And I think the North Node going through Gemini, it's going to be about a time of those two opposites sort of bickering but reharmonizing and re-coming together. There's going to be, since it's the North Node, it's going to be uncomfortable, right? It's an uncomfortable thing, but the most growth in humanity is going to come from these two opposites, these two twins, these two sides of humanity, the yin and the yang, the light and the dark, the red and the blue, whatever have you, these two sides coming together and learning to live with each other and understand each other.
Well, that's what you and I have been talking about. That's what I read, that Carl Jung quote that's about the duality, and then the third piece of the duality is the opposition. That's like the issue of all of life, is this opposition, this duality in the self, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the thing that comes out of it is this that's the transformative energy, right?
Right. The tension of opposites.
The tension of opposites
thing
creates the third thing. I feel that very deeply in myself right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's exactly. I think you just perfectly said that.
Right. Because we've been through a lot of oscillations up until this time, and I really feel like there's this balance. There's this new in-between thing coming out of both of us now, right? Where we're not oscillating between those two things. There's this new stable entity coming out in between, where we're not going too far into, say, like over-giving, and we're not going too far into just like shutting the other out. We're walking this middle path of just stable.
Yeah.
It's a stable, loving relationship.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I hope is that humanity moves that direction as well. And perhaps we're doing that right now. Maybe everyone.
Well, that's what you and I always talk about, because we're both extremely sensitive, psychic, seers or whatever. And so I always feel like I'm doing a lot of the energy work for the planet, as are you.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, we've been doing a lot of work for the masculine and feminine on the planet.
Right. And the truth is everyone is, right? Like everyone at some degree is tuned into the collective consciousness, and is as we work on ourselves, it really does change everyone else, as we're all connected in this deeper inner web. At like the higher levels of consciousness, there's one kind of conscious awareness that we come from, that we can call God. And as we evolve ourselves, we're actually pieces of God evolving itself. And that goes back all the way up to the higher levels and trickles down to everything else as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting, because we were just talking about how, like, whatever at this time, and I was also thinking, like, at this time in this eclipse portal, it's like, and I made a live about timeline jumping, and how, like, basically how we've kind of up-leveled into a new frequency into 2021. And in this eclipse portal, the thing about eclipses is that it accelerates. It's a very quick acceleration of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And because I haven't been able to sleep very well, but I also feel massive changes happening to me psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. And with the whole thing with the timeline jumping and like choosing which reality that you want to focus on, believe in. That's what you and I were talking about this morning, right?
Right.
We were talking about like basically whatever reality you focus on is going to be your truth. It's going to be your reality.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was talking about my sister who was, talking to me about how she's scared of Trump coming back into power and how she's like really worried about it. And I'm like, and then I'm like, that's true. That's one truth. Another truth is that we're also simultaneously, all around the world in America going through a massive spiritual awakening. Which truth do you want to ground in? Which truth do you want to surround yourself with? Which truth do you want to believe in? Which truth do you want to, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. And so we were talking about how everything has multiple truths. And if you can actually open to that versus your truth needing to be the truth.
Right. And within that, there's a polarity, right? There's one side you can tune into that's fear-based, and it's like, oh no, this is happening. I'm afraid of that. I need to do something to take care of that. And you're focusing on the fear and being like, oh, we gotta stop that. And then there's the other side that you can tune into, the positive polarity, which is the side of like, wow, this shift is happening. This change is happening. This change is coming. Isn't that amazing? I would love to be a part of that wave, that change.
Yeah.
And you may be engaging with the same thing. Even you maybe still like go volunteer with the Democrats either way. But it's about the polarity that you're tuning into with your energy, and the actions that flow thereof. Because what's happened, I think, a lot in the recent past is. Maybe this was just my consciousness and where it was at, but it seemed like humanity has been really tuned into the fear of the other side, and that tension has ramped up throughout my lifetime.
Yes.
I was born in the 90s. The big one I remember was when Bush was elected, and there was that whole Bush-Gore thing that created a lot of tension. And then there was the Tea Party that created a lot of tension. And then there was Obama, and that created a lot of tension.
I don't know why
Bill Clinton been ramping
was like,
up.
Bill Clinton was like, nobody gave everybody liked
It
Bill
was
Clinton.
chill.
Everybody liked Bill Clinton. It was so weird.
Yeah.
Except for like super hardcore conservative Republicans.
And now I think they like them less, but at the time the feeling seemed generally pretty neutral, right? So for me it's weird because I was sort of born at this 0 point of like the 90s. Everything's chill. We're just having a good time, bro. Skateboarding, backwards hats, and Nerf guns.
I am so reminiscent of the 90s. It's weird. And I don't know if it's because it's when I was like, 9, 8, 7. Yeah.
So you were born in the 80s. So your actual childhood was in the 90s, and you were much more grounded in that energy.
The 90s was dope. It was like before cell phones. It was great. I don't know why.
My childhood was the 2000s. It was lame.
Because of technology.
It was so lame.
Because technology. Yes. It ruined it.
It ruined it. Technology ruins everything. No, that's not true. But
and
it was an adjustment. It was an adjustment period for sure. We didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
For a little bit.
But wait, so let's go back on track. So we were talking about the eclipse portal. We were talking about duality, truths.
Right.
And whatever truth you want to kind of engage in. We were talking about the eclipse portal and timeline jumping and kind of tuning in. So basically, that's kind of what we mean by timeline jumping.
The reason I was talking about that was that tension growing. I was talking about, so that tension has been growing throughout my lifetime because a lot of focus was put on the other side. I mean, like, I don't like what they're doing. We need to stop that. We need to do things to fight against the evil, fight against the darkness, right? Instead of tuning the other way and looking towards, like, what kind of progress are we excited about making?
Totally. That's it. And the thing that I think is really important, and this is a distinction that I've freaking woken up to in like the last month, is like, for some people think it's irresponsible to focus on the good. People think that you're ignoring the truth of the bad, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And of course, you could make an argument for that. I mean, absolutely.
You
I mean,
could.
if we lived in fucking, Nazi Germany,
you can make a very rational argument for it at any point in time.
Yeah.
But what that does is that ignores the energy. The only real question is like, what is the energy of what you're saying? Where is that coming from? Do you feel afraid? And they'll be like, yes, of course I feel fucking afraid. Why don't you feel afraid? That's a person trying to draw you into fear and draw you into the darkness. And of course they don't see it that way. They may not look at it that way, but it's lacking a level of awareness. It's lacking this slightly higher level of awareness where you're paying attention to the emotional energy of the situation, and you're having faith and accepting that that is the most important thing, truly. Right?
And so there's this response, but people feel this responsibility if they're not participating in the fear.
Mm-hmm.
They feel, and I've been guilty of this massively. This is part of the reason why, like, I was so adamant in 2020 about, anti-Trump and everything. I mean, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump at all, but like I was, more Democrat, more liberal, more like, yeah, rah rah siskumba, and kind of into, ever since Joe Biden's gotten elected, I've kind of been in the vax thing kind of changed my whole like outlook on life. Really, it shifted me into like a no zone of like being no party, no nothing. Because all these people who are liberal, because I decided I didn't want to get vaccinated. All these people who are liberal were like, really, 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 really mad at me, and I was like hurting humanity. And we don't have to talk about all that shit, but yeah, basically, what were we talking about?
We're talking about fear.
We're talking about fear.
Fear. We're talking about the polarity.
Right.
The polarity of energy. It's really like, it's really interesting because it is almost like you could look at fear as this entity that's taken over people and really, really wants to spread itself and really, really wants to take control of everything, and this is sort of maybe, I guess, the idea of the devil or something or whatever, the dark forces.
Yes.
It's like creating this army, and people don't realize that they're taken over by this kind of energy, this sort of conceptualized as a dark entity, because from their point of view and from that level of consciousness, it really seems like you're doing the right thing. It really, really does, and there's infinite evidence for that and infinite claims for that.
Right.
All it's doing is just missing the deeper point of energy and emotions, and recognizing the importance of that and putting that above materiality. That sort of way of thinking puts that below the materiality.
Yes, right? Exactly. That's the shift that I believe that is the most potent and powerful shift that we entered into in 2020. You might be doing the same things on either side of that polarity. You might actually take really similar actions on the other side, but your energy being different is what actually will change the momentum of the thing. You're probably bound to fail if you're operating from a fear consciousness. You're bound to fail. There's going to be opposition that comes up to meet you because you're coming from a consciousness that really deeply believes in that opposition. I don't know if that's true. I mean, what is failure? I mean, people have entire worlds have been built upon fear for many, many thousands of years.
But they haven't really gotten what they thought they would get out of it, or what they claimed they wanted out of it. I don't think.
Well, you can see the larger picture, but maybe they did, because they were based in this didactic materiality where they were like, I want this thing. I want this civilization. I got it. Yeah. Even though I'm miserable and I'm in fear all day long, that doesn't matter. Right. I got the thing I said I wanted.
Right, because ultimately what you get is more misery, and we end up in this world that looks like a utopia on the surface, but everyone inside of it is completely miserable and dark.
Oh, snap. Some food for thought. Damn. Put some cheese on that. Let's eat that cracker. Cheery.
I love that. Eat that cracker. That's a good one. On the spot.
So in terms of accessing our, let's bring it back to the eclipse and the eclipse portal, and shifting into, because the whole point of this podcast is the Psi-Wave. It's the new frequency. It's the new wave that is looking at the progress, that is looking at the new world frequency that we're attuning to, right? That is based in the heart, that is based in non-duality, that is based in paradox, that is based in energy, energy being the basis of all, right? So that's why I think these eclipses are so powerful right now, because I really feel deep shifts happening, mass ego death. What do we mean when we say ego death, Alex? What are we talking about?
We mean essentially the beheading of the false king in your consciousness, right? The ego is a small, limited consciousness, born completely of your physical identity here on this planet, just your conceptions about yourself as a human being and everything that means to you. It's your identity, essentially, that you've affixed yourself to. And
your belief systems that have created your personality, all of the wounding that has created your identity, your profession, how you make money, your friends, what clothes you wear.
I think your belief systems that create your identity is a pretty amazingly succinct way to say it, because that kind of captures the whole thing, right? Your ego is your belief systems that have created your identity. Yep. And what's happening for some of us, maybe all of us, it depends on how strong your ego is, how much you want to fight, and how much misery you can take.
I've been going through a bit of misery lately because I've been going through some serious death, and I've been fighting. My ego's been fighting like a motherfucker.
You seem like you feel so much better.
I feel so much better.
Yeah, I think you went through a lot.
It helped because I saw my friend Julia yesterday, who just has gone through so much. It's been amazing.
Yeah. So ego death is when those belief systems come to a head. Those belief systems, those things you identify with, the things that have created your identity, come to this moment of maximum tension where you just can't take it anymore. You cannot keep operating in that way. It just is not working for you. It is not serving you to such a degree that you drop it and you truly change. And it's extremely painful.
Yeah, it's almost like you're acting in a way, it's all based in pride.
It's based in pride and humility. The death is like a humble moment.
Yes, and it feels so good to be humble. It feels really good, but it takes some fucking, if you have a lot of pride, like Alex and I both have Leo rising, which is the sign, it's like the zodiac side of pride. The lion, the proud lion.
Very proud. Yes, the king
and the queen. So yeah, to take down that identity, it takes some freaking, but I feel like I'm getting better at it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And you are too.
Yeah,
we're just letting them. I've been doing some visualizations with just like letting things melt. I'm just like letting things melt, and I'm kind of like seeing what's underneath. Like, what's the truth underneath this? What's the truth underneath this? Because all of this has been the fluff. It's been the exterior. It's been what's been created from this paradigm that is no longer. It's like
this
what
crystallized armor. It's like literally armor that you've made. You know.
Yeah, it's to what you've needed to survive. It's exactly what you needed to survive.
To defend your soft parts.
Yes, exactly. That's why you and I keep talking about our bodies and why we're changing our bodies, because you and I were both so sensitive that we built up these like armors, right? And now we're like, oh, we don't need this anymore. We're letting go of this identity, and so we're like, oh, this doesn't suit us anymore.
Right.
So how are we going to release this?
Right. And as that happens, our bodies transform. You know, I have this sort of like hunchback thing. It's almost like a turtle shell or something. I'm like, armored myself in. And we're breaking all that up right now. We're breaking all that up.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels really freaking good. It feels really good to break all this up and to for me, it feels really good because, you know, I'm Italian and have a loud mouth and have prided myself on being this like person, and I'm just letting all that go. Just kind of letting all of it go. I'm letting myself just dissolve in a lot of ways. And it's scary as hell, but it's also incredibly liberating. And generally what I've found is that old egoic part of me was in a lot of resistance. It needed to control things a lot more of the time. It didn't know how to receive very well. It was really tired and stressed out. It was scared. It was scared. It was just constantly scared. And I'm learning how to like just release that fear, because that all of that identity came from that fear, and I'm just like releasing it. And now I'm starting to live more in a space of trust and receptivity, which is allowing my true self to be able to emerge. Right.
And you know what's amazing about that is underneath all that, you're still you. It's almost like there's this fear of like you give up those things. I'm not gonna be me anymore. Who am I? And it's you're still you. Your essence is still the same. It didn't go anywhere. It's just clearer and more fun to be around and just
I know. I was like looking at myself in the mirror. You even said, you were like, you look so clear today, and I was like
glowing a little bit.
Yeah, and I like, and I only got like, I don't even know, not that. I woke up at 5 o'clock this morning.
So early.
I woke up at when the first light came through the shutters. I was awake, and I was like, I felt awake, and then I just like sat at my altar all morning, and I like took a walk with the dog at the sunrise, and I just was like, I just feel kind of there's a rebirth energy happening right now. I'm like letting these things shed. I was really open to just letting that armor just you know just die, letting that armor die, so that I can just live in love. That's who I am. Chub Squeeda.
Yeah, Chub Squeeda.
That was my name when I was a kid. My mom named me that.
It's so cute. It's the cutest
name.
It's
It's like my superpower name, Chub Squeeda.
Yeah, it's like your inner child. At her most empowered, your inner child.
Yes. Charge, Chub Squeeda.
Yes, the queen.
To the bakery.
Conquest. Conquest all the muffins. I love it so much.
Oh my goodness.
And it's like there's this expression, like you see like childhood pictures of you, there's this sort of look you have to you, this expression you have on your face, and like the more we do this, the more that sort of thing comes back.
I was looking at myself in the mirror this morning, and I was like, whoa, I look like I did when I was 5 in that picture. Just happy,
so happy,
clear, sweet,
Mm-hmm.
lovable, easygoing, super relaxed. I used to be able to sleep anywhere. I was like super chill. I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like getting back to that. Somewhere along the way, I was like, the world made me into a weird ass person. That is not who I am. So I'm just letting all that dissolve and going back to the basics.
Well, we did some some regression work yesterday
that was
I think
crazy.
Really catalyzed this. You know, that's the thing about this stuff is it's like it's a little. It's so deep in the subconscious and so old that it's like you can be like, okay, I'm letting go of these things, I'm doing better and stuff, but it's almost like we have to do some of that.
Well, it all started because of the dream. I've been having insane dreams lately. Like I usually I've had night terrors throughout my life where I like jump up, I talk, I run outside naked, I do all kinds of crazy shit. Lately, like the past week, 2 weeks, especially the last week, they've really ramped up. They've been insane, and I've been pointing at you.
Not last night, though.
Not last night. And I've been pointing at you, and I've been like, it's you.
Yeah, it was the worst. I'd just be like sleeping peacefully. Then she would like jump up, turn on the light, and be like, ah, and pointing at me.
It's you. It's in your legs. I said that.
I said that. My legs.
I'd
I was
be
the
running
devil
from
in one
you.
of your dreams. Yeah.
And so, and then we would have these fights that were like, there were reflections of that, and they were like where I was just like we'd literally be pointing the finger at each other. I'd be like, no, it's you, and I'd be pointing my finger at you, right? And yeah, finally yesterday I just was like, I gotta get to the root of this. This is ridiculous. Like I can't live my life sleeping like this. I can't sleep. And what is this darkness I am so afraid of? Because I wake up in these terrors. I wake up in this absolute panic. What the fuck is coming after me? So yesterday you did a regression on me. I wanted you to do a regression on me, and you fucking did one. And it was so amazing how I got so clear about what the fuck has been going on with me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, you like What did you do? You took me to.
I took me back to your childhood. You know, I just asked you, like, where was the first time you started having nightmares? And it went back to your summer camp experience at 7 years old, where, you know, you
That was when I think I first experienced, like, evil in my dreams.
Right.
And it was because I got made fun of. Or no, I got, I was like a mixture of getting made fun of and not getting chosen and being rejected. And
you know what's funny is at first I tried to deal with it rationally and just be like, okay, that's not true. Go to your child self and tell her like she's loved. That's not true. And you're like, it still feels resistant. It's not working. And ultimately what did it was like, okay, just shine light into it. You're like, I'm in a dark forest. And I was like, okay, just call in cosmic light and shine light.
Yeah,
that's all it was.
That's what the memory of that time was that it was in this dark forest. I remember really, it's weird. You know, it's weird how we have memories about things. But that was like one of those, it was like a dark forest and I had these dark dreams. And then we just brought in the light. We just brought in all the light to light the forest, to light that time, to light it all. The craziest part about that whole thing though was what happened when we went. I went and I was in a room.
So I asked like, what does the darkness represent to you? And you said death and.
Right, because I want to know what the fuck this darkness is. We finished it and then we went back into it because I was like, I still didn't get the answer that I was wanting.
So we just asked light to be shown into this darkness, asked to light it all up, light all the darkness, and it was like, what do you see in there? And what appeared once the darkness was penetrated by this light was a little girl, you said. And then you said she's a monster.
Well, no. So I was a little girl laying in like a dark room, like on her kind of belly with her head, like on her, face in her hands, kind of on the floor. And then I went up to her and I shined the light on her. And then when she kind of like looked up, she was a monster. And it was just the clearest thing to me that like, the little girl became the monster.
She was scary to you. You were scared. You're like, she's scary. That's what you said.
Oh, really? I don't remember
you were actually
that.
like, you kind of sounded like a little girl. You're like, she's scary.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah, it was that I realized that I become a monster when I'm because it's hard to describe. I understand it, but
there's this insecure part of yourself,
right?
The inner child that's insecure, and it becomes a monster when threatened. Yeah,
it becomes a monster when it feels rejected, or it feels it becomes mean, it becomes scary, it becomes controlling, it becomes all those things. That's what the monster represents.
Because it's scared.
Because it's scared. Because it's scared.
And that's interesting because we were just talking about people earlier. And it's like if you're operating from fear consciousness, meaning if you're scared,
you become a monster.
Yeah. Even if what you're doing is like seems noble on the surface, you know, and makes rational sense. If you're scared, that monster's running things.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's so interesting. It's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow because there's a lot of noble causes.
There's a lot.
But I think it's the intention behind it. It's the feeling behind it.
Are you scared or are you in love with it?
Right.
You know.
Right. I don't know why this is popping into my head, but it's like I see these ads for like Ben Stiller. He does something on like for like. He goes to like Syria or some shit, and he's always like talking from a tent, trying to help these refugees that are like the most intense Middle Eastern refugees. And I can I can feel. I love Ben Stiller so much. I can feel that he genuinely loves these people, and he like genuinely wants to help them. There's like I don't know why that's coming up, but there's like a difference to people that are championing causes that you can feel there's the basis of it is fear. And they switch back and forth. I think they very quickly can switch back and forth.
Yeah.
I think that's why you have to stay in a place of it's like Mother Teresa consciousness where you're like, it's really coming up. That's why she was so powerful because she was just in a space of compassion and love.
Right.
Right.
Like I said, you can be doing the same things. Like that same person can be dealing with those Syrian refugees, and they can be in just out of the love for these people, and then something can happen, and they can flip into fear consciousness and be doing the same kinds of things, but they're feeding now their energy into this new reality. It's this new fear-based thing, and it can be so subtle, and
and it's a thing that you constantly have to check, and it can be a trap. Because you sometimes don't know how to get out of the fear. A lot, I have like techniques that I get out of the fear with, but like a lot of times people don't know how to get out of fear. It's just the way that they've been programmed. It's like it's their entire life.
Right. I think the only thing for me, the ultimate pill that dissolves all is just that it's not real.
Right.
It's not real. That's the only thing that is the immediately kills the fear. It's like almost operating like if you're in a nightmare, what's the thing that kills the nightmare? It's like, oh, it's not real. It's just a nightmare. You know what I mean?
That's been helping me so much. So this is like your philosophy. And
this is another thing that sounds deeply irresponsible or nihilistic or something, but it's not.
I used to think that it was when you would tell me this, but I've really opened up to it, and it's helping me a lot because it's really helping me because of the dreams that I've had. So, because I feel like the dreams are just a metaphor, right? They're a metaphor for how I act in life, like how I live in life. Like there's these parts of myself that I'm afraid of, that I run from. My power, my insecurity, all this shit, whatever you want to call it, my wounding. I run from myself. I run from my own wounding, and then I become a monster because of it. Because of my own fear, right? And so that has like awoken me to the way that I navigate because that's just my subconscious. And so the way that this has been something that's happened to me for my entire life, but the past couple nights since I've started adopting this narrative of it's not real. I've been able to stop myself. Like I did it last night, didn't I? Did I do it last night?
You did.
Yeah.
You did. You woke up in the middle of the night and you just, instead of like the normal like, it's there, I forgot this thing, there's evil in the house, whatever, you're just like, it's not real, and then turned over and went to sleep. And it was an incredible shift because the other nights you're so convinced that what you're experiencing is real.
Yeah.
So deeply convinced that it's real danger, like as real as if your fucking house was on fire.
Yeah, my house usually is on fire. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and it's like it's really on fire to you, like for real.
Yep. And that's what's fucking crazy because my entire life I've been running from this, and then all of a sudden now I'm just waking up to it. So then I started just playing with that in my waking life, and I'm like,
life like a dream.
Well, because my dreams are just a reflection of how I am in my waking time. So it's illuminating how much fear I hold in my waking time. I've been paying attention to that. How am I constricted? How am I restricted? How am I restricting the flow inside of myself, the flow of love, right? And so just at the grocery store yesterday, I just started allowing myself to just be like, this isn't real. And it's not in a way that is like nihilistic, or it's just that it's attuning to the truth that I'm a cosmic being having a human experience at this point in time. Right. And the more that I can kind of loosen on my grip on this being the only reality, the end all be all.
Right.
And it just makes things easier.
Right. And the reason why it's not nihilistic is because it actually makes this life better. It actually improves this life and makes your experience in the moment better.
Because you're not holding on as much. You're not grasping as hard.
Right. The reason is it serves that kind of it's not real consciousness actually serves the moment much better than when you're taking it very, very seriously. Yes.
Yeah, so that's what's been going on with the dream sleep, and then how does this relate to the eclipse portal we were talking about originally?
Hold on, there was one more thought I had just about that. Really, I was just thinking about like our stories and our hero archetypes and stuff, and lots of times the heroes in our stories and movies and video games and whatever do these like courageous things, almost like life is a video game. It isn't real, right? They do these crazy stunts, acrobatic things. They're like, whoa, no one would ever do that in real life. That's way too bold, brash, or whatever. But it's like when you treat it like it's not real, you can do more of those things. You can do more of those heroic actions.
heroic actions. It's just loosens the. It really does. When you talk about this is the thing that makes me feel like The Matrix is a documentary and not a movie.
You're right.
Because when yesterday I started finding myself thinking about like, because you and I watch The Matrix all the time, right?
Right.
And
we're watching it last night for a few minutes.
Yeah, and I'm always like, we're always talking about how like Morpheus is like the leader, the most awakened, right? He's the most awakened of all the people that understand the most about the Matrix.
And his name means the Awakener. He's like it's a name of a Greek god that was like the god of
sleep and dream time.
Yeah.
Right. I always wonder like how much Morpheus could work in the Matrix, because it's interesting, right? Because Neo's the one. He's the one that completely sees through it all and actually becomes God, right? Able to do whatever, fly up in the sky and, whatever. But Morpheus had like an understanding that it wasn't real. He didn't have a full understanding. So I'm always like thinking about that. Like how much of this is seeping in? Remember that part where he starts like, he's like takes the pill and then he's like, Morpheus is talking and then he's like slowly like he sees reality starting to kind of melt in the mirror. Right. Like that's kind of where my consciousness has been a little bit lately. Like I'm like, oh, because things are kind of becoming wavy. Like
you see the waves, yes.
Things are becoming wavy. Things are becoming like like more shifting. They're more fluid. It's
you see
energy.
The sort of shimmer.
Yeah, it's just that's what you see a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's almost like reality looks like when you're in the desert and you see heat coming off of the ground or something. It just gets a little wibbly wobbly and it's like kind of shimmery and rainbowy and everything kind of looks like that a little bit.
Yeah, and so I'm always like, how much did Morpheus get? How awakened was he? Right. Like, and what did he get?
Because he knows it's not real. He's literally, he exists outside of the dream. He knows that. And he has a lot of control in there, but he doesn't have the level of control that Neo gets. And it's like, why?
But remember when he's training him? And they're doing the martial arts and he's like teaching him? So he's like, sorry.
And he knows oxygen isn't real. He's like, are you
think
breathing?
You have air that you're breathing?
Right.
I've been thinking about that quote.
But he can't fly like Neo.
Why can't he fly?
He can jump really far, but he can't fly.
Isn't that interesting?
And he can't stop bullets.
Right. He can't do the thing that with the but we don't know for sure if he can. Oh no, because Trinity says that she's never seen anyone do that before.
Right. So even they were still limited on some level, which is, I mean, like us, like we're aware of this. We really do believe it and experience it, but we can't fucking fly. We can't fucking float yet. But there's stories of like yogis living to 900 years and being able to levitate and stuff.
Well, let's think about people who kind of have mastered this material reality. Like, I mean, you can name your people. Like somebody that comes to mind for me, and I know it's cheesy, but I love her, is Oprah, right?
Sure.
She's like, she came from these horrendous circumstances, has kind of in a sense mastered. She became the captain of her own soul, the captain of her own ship, right? But it's interesting because there's certain things that she's still like, how much does she, I don't know.
I think it's somewhat like a Morpheus situation. She doesn't seem super interested in like the physical body tricks that much, and she's not really interested in like the yogi things of like, look, I can put my legs behind my head and
she's more about energy and power.
She's more about power.
She was more powerful, I think, back in the 90s and 2000s. I don't know. Maybe
it's because of her Christian background.
No, she's not super Christian. But she's not really Christian.
No, that's not what I mean. I don't mean that she's really Christian, but she's, she's just
Or let's think about somebody else. Who else?
She might think it would be silly if we were talking about flying around like Neo.
Totally.
Because she's operating within like really practical. She's very practical.
Oh, okay. I have somebody. Okay. David Blaine.
Hey, yes, that's a good one.
Okay, David Blaine. Because Oprah's mastered material wealth. How about that? And a kind of consciousness, right? David Blaine's like masters body.
Yeah. Have you ever watched interviews with David Blaine? I watched him on the Joe Rogan podcast, which talked with him for like 3 hours. And there's something about that guy where he's like knows something. He's like he knows, like he's seen behind the Matrix kind of feel to him, and he isn't really explain his tricks that much, but he kind of does. He's kind of just like, yeah, it just is what it is. But you can kind of tell, like, it's like he understands things that is like, you just wouldn't even accept it if I said it, almost, you know?
So you feel like he gets the fact that he's not real?
I think so.
Yeah.
It really seems like it. He has this almost gleefulness about him when he's doing crazy shit.
He shoves like shit like that.
He shoves a needle through his whole arm, all the way through. Like, it's like, holy shit. And he's gleeful about it. He's like, look, it's not real. Do you see how not real that any of this is? He's like this gleeful trickster almost, you know?
So he's done the body. Oprah's done some kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
What about it? Who else? Who else is there? Masters of somehow of this reality.
I was thinking of someone just a second ago. God, there's another thing about David Blaine. You know, he eats glass, and it's not a trick. He literally just eats glass. It's like a thing.
That sounds horrible.
Yeah, he went up to Jeff Bezos. And if there's a video of him going up to Jeff Bezos at a party, he takes his wine glass, takes a bite out of it, chews it, swallows it, gives it back to him.
That's rad.
Yeah.
That's fucking rad.
It's
how did
awesome.
he end up? How did Jeff Bezos end up at the same party as him?
He got
Was
invited.
he hired?
I think he was invited or hired or something.
Oh
yeah.
my God. I bet Jeff Bezos just loved it. He
Yes.
probably just loved that.
His laugh was so, yeah.
Jeff Bezos. That's not somebody. You could say he mastered.
Yes, in
you
a way.
could.
Yeah. But you don't like it. Yeah, he's kind of gross.
Beyonce's a master of some sort.
Beyonce is a master. God, I was thinking of Aleister Crowley. I don't know a ton about Crowley, and a lot of people hate him, but I've heard stories of him doing wilds. I heard a story about, like, because he used to go to the pyramids a lot, right? And I think he was in, like, the king's chamber or something like that, and he had some students around him, and he was, like, really depressed, which is interesting. He was, like, depressed and, like, at one of his low points, and his students, like, asked him, like, what kind of, I don't know, asked him what kind of stuff he did, and he created a ball of light, shot it up to the top of the room, illuminated the whole room, like there's like real ass magic kind of shit, and then just dissipated the light. And they're like, whoa, like, if you can do that, why are you so depressed? He's like, what's the point? It's a stupid magic trick. He's just like, went so beyond where he could do shit like that, at least in stories, you know, who knows, but like, he was like, what's the point of this reality? Because he was so beyond it. He got, like, depressed.
Whoa.
Isn't that crazy?
He's a very mysterious figure, and we will never know because he was so long ago. But I do love his tarot deck.
Yeah.
I've tried to read his stuff, though, and I'm like, this is not...
It's pretty out there, motherfucker.
It's way fucking out there, but he did fucking...
Really dark.
That was kind of a cool time, though. That was like the metaphysical time, right?
Right.
When was he born?
Late 1800s.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was a mountaineer too. He was like almost like a Teddy Roosevelt kind of figure, a little bit, but like the dark bad boy version of him, because he
satanic.
He was a rich kid. His dad died when he was like 10 or something, and left him a bunch of money.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he like fucked his maid. He fucked his mom's maid when he was like 14. And his mom called him the Beast. His mom was really Christian. That's why he was called the Beast. His mom was like, "You're a beast," after he fucked his maid.
Right. So he started embodying the devil archetype.
Yeah.
Of pleasure.
Yes, exactly.
And that's why he was into the 666, because he was all about the earth.
Yes, but he was simultaneously very disciplined, apparently, which is he was a complete
Wonder
paradox.
If he's a Capricorn.
I don't know. We could look that up, but he's a complete paradox where he was like really, really disciplined, a remarkable discipline. Would do spells that took like a month or longer to do, where you do the same thing every day. You know, these really long, complicated rituals and stuff. And at the same time, he was a drug addict. You know,
Paradox. Dude.
Yeah.
Paradox. It's like George Harrison. George Harrison. That's one. Yeah. George Harrison was a insane, intensely devout yogi, and would meditate for hours and hours, and then was like a hardcore coke addict, a drug addict as well. It's interesting. Paradox. You can't be perfect. You gotta have the balance.
When we were watching Moonstruck the other day, it was interesting what Nicolas Cage said in that movie. He's like, "We're not here to be perfect. We're here to make a mess of ourselves."
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the drunken master archetype, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. Did you want to talk about how long we got here?
Let's see. How long
How long is this one?
It's in bars. It's not in time.
Oh, whatever. Do you want to talk about Teal Swan?
1,463 bars.
Let's talk about Teal Swan a little bit. Because
switch that. I'm gonna switch that right now. There we go. All right. Yeah, we're at 48 minutes and 54
cool.
seconds.
Yeah, let's talk about well, you and I like kind of we're always like looking to we're always like looking for interesting people, right? To listen to. There's not very many that we like.
Right.
We love Jessa Reed.
Make sure that's pointed at your face.
My face?
Yeah, so it's not off axis. You're kind of getting at the side of it.
Oh, like that?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
There you go. Yep.
Better.
Yep.
Thank you.
This is buzzing too, that cord. Whatever.
Just let it be, dude.
No, it's fine.
Let it be.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, so you and I are always looking for like people that we like spiritual. I don't know. We don't even know. I don't even know what the fuck it's called.
Interesting people to
interesting
listen to.
people who have a higher vibe on the
or
new
a different
consciousness
conception
tip.
of reality.
Yeah, different conception of reality. Who are tuned into some of the shit we're talking about. Energy being the most important. And I don't know how this came up. For some reason, I was talking about Teal Swan. For some reason, I was talking about Teal Swan. Why was I talking about Teal Swan? Do you remember?
Well, there was something that happened a couple days ago where, I don't know what darkness you went to, but then you went down a rabbit hole of Teal Swan for some reason.
I have no idea. Oh.
What was it that happened?
Sometimes I just go on YouTube to look at shit because YouTube is so basic. It's like the most basic place. Like why can't they get their algorithms going, man? You know?
Well, they do have their algorithms. It's just not what you want.
But I was just because 11/11 is my thing and I love it. And I was born at 11/11 and I've just been opening up to that energy. So I just typed in. I was curious to know what other people had said about 11/11 on YouTube, and I was like, "What's the consciousness? Mass consciousness? Most of it is so fucking cheesy. It's like the cheesiest shit in the world. It's not authentic at all." But I saw Teal Swan had a thing. Teal Swan was somebody that an old friend / healer mentor person introduced to me. And when she introduced her to me, she's like this spiritual guru type person, teacher. She's got a bunch of videos. She's like really beautiful. Anyway, I listened to her explanation of 11/11. It was all right. But she has this life story that is insane. And I was like, I watched it. Basically, she basically says that she was raised in rural Idaho, and somehow she became part of this guy abducted her and made her be part of this satanic cult for years and years. And there's this really cheesy news story about her that's you can find on YouTube. But I watched it and there was something about it that was really fucking off to me. And I've never been able to put my finger on it. I just feel like she's lying, but I never have been able to understand why she would. And I've never allowed myself to actually even say that because I don't want to say that somebody who's claiming whatever is not telling the truth.
Right.
So Alex is super psychic and just very highly intuitive. And beyond that, you're just otherworldly. So I was like, watch this. What do you think of this person? It's literally within a minute. Because I found...
in the first few seconds of listening to her, I just didn't let myself say it for a few minutes. But in the first few seconds, I was like, oh, this person's a liar. This person's phony. Which is hard... I don't want to say that for sure because she's talking about some seriously traumatic shit, but just the vibe to me, I was immediately I don't trust this person.
I don't doubt that things have happened to her. Obviously, I definitely think things have happened to her, and I honor that, and I acknowledge that. That being said, there was something about she was talking about how she had been witness to I was like this part. There's a part where somebody's like, and so how many people did you witness?
How many kids
did you witness being murdered? And
she was like, oh, let me see. And she's like, I think like 5, it was that's something that you would know immedately. I've seen 5 kids, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe it's just so suppressed because it was so traumatic that she just barely can tune into it. But I don't think so. I've seen other people who have witnessed murder and they don't. Yeah. It's not like that.
Yeah.
It struck me as such you're so phony. She feels like a compulsive liar.
She's a compulsive
And
liar.
I've experienced compulsive liars before, and they have that vibe.
So that's what Alex basically said. He's like, she's a compulsive liar. And I'm like, well, but first of all, I was like, why? I was like, this feels like she's lying. He's like, she's definitely lying. And I was like, but why? Why would she lie? Why would she do that? And he's like, attention.
I was like, duh, attention.
And I was like, oh.
Why do compulsive liars lie? Attention.
I can't believe I didn't get that. Like, what? Why wouldn't I connect those dots? Because I didn't want to assume that about her. But I felt deep in my bones that I can feel that there's just something really inauthentic about her, and I think it's fucked up. And that's why I'm talking about it right now, because she's a spiritual teacher, and that's fucked up. And she's kind of got this cult energy about her that's not right. It's manipulative and weird. And so then when we outed that about how she's got this, she's a compulsive liar who needs attention, I was like, oh, because then the whole interview made sense. And then everything else made sense. I was like, oh, this is how she became famous. This is how she became doing what she... Because it's not like the stuff she says is not right. Like, a lot of the stuff she says is really cool. And I think there's a lot of cool stuff about her. Right? Nothing is black or white. Nothing is black or white.
Right. But to me, the real spiritual teachers all have this sort of lightheartedness about them.
Yes.
And she's not lighthearted. And there's definitely darker teachers than her. It's not like she's like really tight or serious, but she's just kind of vacant and almost sociopathic feeling.
Yes, that was it. It was a sociopathic, narcissistic energy that you were picking up on. That is it is pretty tight. There's not a lot of room for joy. I don't think I've ever seen her smile.
Right.
I mean, maybe barely, or laugh. I'd barely see her laugh.
Right. But it's not like Nazi energy. It's just like, I'm, maybe it's because she's disassociated because of her trauma.
Yeah. I'm sure that there's been some shit that I know I can feel there's been shit that's happened to her. I have a feeling. Anyway,
it's not light is all I'm saying.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what we're talking about is this people that are teachers being, because I've gone down this hole a lot in my life where I've put people up on pedestals who are spiritual teachers and stuff.
They drop real wisdom. They're dropping real wisdom rationally.
And they're so
energy,
serious.
Yes.
And it's all based in like this pain.
Right.
It's all based in pain. It's not based in joy.
Right.
The teacher that I love, one of the teachers that I love the most is Anita Morjani. And she's just this really she's literally like a light being. She's just a little light being. She's
awesome,
silly, and she's older, but she's just
she's a sweet old woman.
She's just wonderful. I love her. But you're absolutely right with this lightness. But I feel like in this era, it's even the lightness is going even further to like real spiritual teachers kind of being more of like comedians and.
Well, they've all I've been listening to Ram Dass a lot lately, and he's almost like a comedian sometimes. Like most of the really good spiritual teachers, I think, are kind of comedians in a way. There's this trickster aspect to them.
Yeah. Well, and you love comedians. Those are some of your favorite people.
Right. Because they embody paradox.
Right.
They bring light to darkness.
They
talk about really dark shit and make light of it.
Yes.
Right? They're making light.
They're
make light workers.
Light. They make light. They're not perpetuating. It's the timeline.
Yes.
Which energy frequency are you tuning into? Which timeline? Because that's the timeline you're going to go down. If you want to talk, it's making non-linear reality, non-linear energy becoming linear, right? So whatever energy frequency you're tuning into, that's going to become your reality. That's going to become your timeline. So if you're going to stay in that kind of teal swan where you're in that brooding energy, you're going to continue down that. That's going to be the timeline, right? That fear-based energy, right?
Right.
Versus like a Jessa Reed or a Ram Dass energy that's just lighter, that's funnier, that's like taking this because the darkness has this constriction and this heaviness, and there has to be this alchemy point, right? There has to be an alchemy point where you laugh.
Right. You
laugh and you release it and you shift it, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway. I think that's really good. You've awakened that to me. You've really helped me see that that truth. And yeah, if you guys are like following spiritual teachers and they're really, really, really serious, like just check it if that's the timeline that you really want to tune into, because I lived in Seattle for like 4 years.
Dark place.
that's where I learned about Teal Swan. That's where it was like there's a dark energy to that place. It's serious, it's brooding, it's not light, it's constantly in this pain body. It's living and working in this pain body, and it's like working through trauma, but the trauma never ends. The trauma never ends. It's very hard to make light of it.
You think you're going to get to the bottom of that well, you can't. It's that Einstein quote, you cannot solve a problem from the
same consciousness that created it.
Right. There's no
It's my
end
favorite
to that
quote
well.
of all time.
Yeah.
Nope, you can't. Exactly. Yeah. So that's the timeline jumping.
Right.
That's exactly the timeline jumping. You have to shift the frequency. The frequency, what frequency are you at? What frequency are you at? Because right now in this eclipse portal, what frequency are you at? Do you want to stay in that frequency? Is that the frequency you want to establish yourself in? Because there's this powerful time of change and the alchemy and chaos and shifting right now. Right. We're in between two eclipses, so you can attune yourself to higher, frequencies. Right.
And there's this sort of psychological paradigm that we've been operating within, where we're like, oh, you got to work out your trauma. Let's go into it. Let's work it out.
Yeah, shadow work.
And Ram Dass talked about that too. He was a psychologist, and he's like, the way you do it here is you just let it go. There's no working it out.
That's what Oprah says.
Through it. Yeah.
She's like, at some point you just got to let it go.
Which is really hard to hear for someone who's had really serious trauma. But and a lot of psychology is like, yeah, you have to work it out. We have to go into it. But
then you're just living a life in pain all the time.
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest, honestly, that's the biggest shift for me in 2021. I'm just done. I feel like the first 37 years of my life were so much of that.
If you really want to change, you got to just be done.
I remember listening to fucking Oprah talk about this on one of her shows, and she was like, somebody was talking about their trauma, and Oprah's like been molested, raped, fucking all the shit. Like anybody can be done, does happen to anybody. And she was like, at some point you just like, you have to process it, but then at some point you just have to be like, all right, I'm done with this. Like, and move on, let it go. You just got to let it go. That's what she said. At some point, you just got to let it go. And it's like that's the thing. People don't know how to let it go. We've become so attached to our wounding and this processing and the trauma and the triggers, which is important. Not going to fucking dismiss that. Super important. At the same time, it's a choice. How long do you want to stay in it, right? You and I are always working with this.
Right. It's really hard to hear because it's attached to your pride. It's attached to your pride, and your ego is attached to this trauma, and rationally very horrible things may have happened to you. And
very horrible things.
It feels like a dismissal, a rejection. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's the rejection in there. It's like when you don't it feels like you're dismissing it. And
it's this very, very, very fine line between spiritual bypassing, where there's that. Because, I mean, it's like so much, because we also live in a culture that is repressed. The previous, like, till 1985 was like people were not into self-help, or 1960s, I guess. But, and then people got really into self-help, but then it was like pet positivity, right? So then you spiritual bypass. I did that too. And then I went to the shadow work. So I was into the positivity. Then I was into like the Abraham Hicks shit. Then I was into the shadow work, where I was like going into it. And when I discovered that, it was so liberating. But then I never got out of it. I was like, this is an endless well of pain that I'll never, ever, ever, ever get out of.
Right.
Unless I make a choice to get out.
So what happened was you were denying your pain. Then you got a release because you accepted and you acknowledged your pain. And now you're coming to a moment where you're letting go of your pain, which is very different than repressing your pain. It's a subtle line.
And I think that's the thing, I think, is that you have to acknowledge it. You have to witness it. You have to bring light to it. But you don't have to live in it.
Right.
And, at the same time, healing is not linear. It's not a linear process. So however long you need to process it is however long you need to process it. I think we're here to give you the option that you don't it doesn't have to take years and years of processing. You can't at some point just be like, okay, I'm ready to let this go.
Right. Well, we've been talking about this revision thing too. We talked about that on the last podcast. And I think that was a really big part of your healing here. You mentioned things not being linear. And I think a really big part of the way this processing happens is you actually go back to those parts of yourself. You go back in time. You literally time travel, and you heal those parts in the past. It's like the past is not a fixed thing. It's not this thing that has to be damaging and wounding and traumatic forever. You can go back to that stuff throughout time. It's not linear, and you can heal that, and you can even do that maybe for other people. I think you could go back and do that for say World War II or something like that. We can do that. There's people doing that work on this planet right now, going back in time and healing things.
Yeah, it would just take enough people on the planet living from that paradigm to begin into truly believing in it. That would begin to shift the materiality.
Right.
I mean, I really think that is how it works, but
Right.
but we're so dense in our materiality at this point in time. But we're in the beginning of a new era. That is, and that is going to be the new era. Like eventually, that's what it will become. It's so interesting how stuff in the future, like future movies, which you and I love watching shit about the future. It's interesting how they don't really include that much.
They don't include what?
Like people doing stuff like, it's interesting how like a lot of future like movies and TV shows and stuff are kind of dystopian.
Right.
They're not like, because that's a future option if people actually started doing that kind of stuff.
Well, maybe it's because
it's the timeline.
Yeah, because it's the timeline. I mean,
it's the frequency.
This thing applies to the future too. You can go to the future and heal it, just like you can go to the past and heal it. If you're on a dystopian timeline, you're imagining this dystopian future and be like, oh no, what if this thing happens? Well, go to that future where that's real. Go to that dystopian timeline and heal it. Just shine light on it. Just shine. Ask for light to be shown on it. In the same way we asked for that in your past. Because like trying to be rational and linear about it and change like the minute details of the past, it didn't seem to be working. The only thing that worked was just simply shine light into all the dark corners of it.
Yeah, and this is I mean. This is what this whole podcast is about. It's about the Psi energy behind all matter.
The Psi.Wave, the internal frequency is what that means.
Yeah, dog.
The same thing.
Yeah, endo sign.
Psi internal, endo internal.
Hell
wave,
yeah.
Frequency, sign, wave, frequency.
Yeah, dude. Shit is so cool. I love what we're creating right now.
Thanks.
But yeah, that's what this whole podcast is about this new frequency, this new energy, and working with all of that energy, working with it all and starting to normalize it.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about? We didn't really look at these charts much. Do you want? We started there.
Oh yeah, we can talk about the charts for a second.
We don't have to.
If you feel like it. The one thing I was kind of looking at these charts that I thought was interesting, that I thought I would be interested in talking about with you, was and I'm not sure how. I mean, it's not going to last that long, but currently through both of these eclipses, the most powerful aspect I've seen, besides the opposition of the eclipses, is the Pluto opposing Mars.
I was just looking at that.
Pluto opposing Mars. That's pretty fucking volatile energy.
Right.
I think that's part of what's going on right now. This deep, transformative, chaotic.
Pluto is death and rebirth. Pluto kind of is the planet of ego death.
It is, if you are in the flow of it.
And Mars is willpower, and I mean Mars is sort of deeply tied into the ego in defending itself. Mars has a lot to do with your defense mechanisms. Mars can be that wounded animal.
But if Mars is in service to the spirit, it's really just pushing forward. It's really having that power to push through that ego death. That's what I'm feeling right now.
Right. And then the ego really serves you. I mean, your ego is always a thing. It's a necessary part of functioning in human consciousness, but it will serve you instead of
restrict you, make you live in fear. Well, that's what Gary Zukov says. He says when the personalities come to meet the energy of the soul, serve the energy of the soul, you have authentic power.
Right. And Pluto is the higher octave of Mars.
That's true.
Right.
That's true. So Pluto's in Capricorn and Mars is in Cancer. That's also interesting because it's the opposition of the archetypal masculine and feminine energies. Pluto's in Capricorn, sign of the father. Mars is in the energy of the mother. Cancer's in the energy of the mother.
Pluto, the glyph of Pluto, it's the soul above all, right? It's the circle representing the sun, representing the soul, the spirit, and that's above the crescent, which is the moon, which is the emotions, which is above the cross, which is the earth. So your emotions raising your spirit up above the earth. Because when we're going through these ego death emotions, there's all these really intense emotions, right? And they can be pushing you down, keeping you from actually going through it. But you can flip it, and you can use those emotions to sort of catapult you through.
Yeah. What do you think? So that's what you mean? That's how the Mars in Cancer?
Mars in Cancer. I mean, Cancer is a very protective and mothering energy.
Mars in Cancer is kind of a tough one because it's like those are kind of opposing energies.
Well, it's you gain your energy through
assertive mothering.
Yes. And it's at the 29th degree of Cancer too, which is an ending, which is...
So that's 20. Oh, you're right.
Mars is at the 29th degree. So...
You're looking at the... Oh, the next eclipse.
I'm looking at the new moon eclipse. Oh, were you looking at the old one?
Doesn't matter. Yeah, I was just looking at both of them.
Oh, well, the opposition is still
29
there.
degrees.
They're opposed in both of them.
That's interesting. That's the very last... So the eclipse is happening on the very last degree. So it's still... It's almost like it's completing something here.
Yeah.
It feels like it's completing something.
That's I think, what happens. The energy sort of comes to a head, and it's... Maybe it's not a waning. I think it's usually when at the 29th degree, that energy is at one of its strongest points. But it's
know what it is. Oh, I just got a download. I feel like it's something. There's an assertion of the feminine power rising on this planet. Not just women, right? Empathy, the feminine, the earth, the darkness, the spirituality, the energy behind the matter, the yin, right? The empathy, the emotion, us starting to value it. That's actually getting empowered. And then Pluto is in Capricorn, which is the old structures. So the old structures are getting demolished as we speak, right? And the new and the feminine is rising. It's increasing in power.
Whenever there's an opposition, it's sort of that Gemini kind of energy we were talking about earlier, where there's these two sides, both looking at each other, both opposed to each other, these opposite energies, and they both need to balance each other. They both need to see the other side's point of view. So this wounded mother feminine type of energy is being forced to die and look at the Capricorn energy, right? It's being forced through this ego death because the really protective Cancerian thing is being asked to let go and give up its protective instincts, right? And so what's the Capricorn side being asked to give up by this opposition? What's the other side of that?
I think that it's releasing its need to control.
They're both releasing their need to control, right? One is this fatherly
one structure.
Control.
One's this old school structure, hierarchy, patriarchy, old school colonial energy that has held up the world,
which is Capricorn. Which, interestingly, Capricorn is also a feminine energy. It is an earth sign, but it's thought of as the father. So it's this sort of caretaker father sort of energy.
Right.
But it's protecting through this conservative thing. Because all these structures that we feel are tyrannical and limiting and whatever, they actually were built as protections initially. It's like this father. Right. It's like this overprotective father.
Structure. To hold up so that there's no chaos.
So we have the overprotective...
You're always talking about structure.
Right.
You're
a lot of Capricorn energy.
You have a lot of Capricorn.
There's this overprotective father and overprotective mother that are fighting right now, butting heads, and they're going to both be forced to go through a death and a transformation through release.
That's what's happening with you and I.
Absolutely.
Damn. It's also happening in each and every one of us in our own souls.
Right.
So you can just take that within. It could be happening in relationships. It can be happening for yourself, your own duality within the self. What is needing to be released so that there can be ultimately more balance. What has been imbalanced. Right. For me, it's been this ego identity that has been basing its security and fear on this old system, which has made the mother much guarded and overbearing.
Right.
It's like this. It's a distortion of both of the energies. Right.
And these are both Pluto and Mars are in the last decans of these signs right now, and so that's blending them with other energies. Right. So like, the final decan of Cancer is blending with Pisces energy, this hypersensitivity, this hyper compassion, right? Which has been a thing too. Like, you think you're being compassionate with a thing, but then you're like over giving and you get resentful, right? And you're constantly looking out at the world and being so wounded by all the suffering that's out there, because there's always suffering out there, and Pisces can get very, very weighed down and very upset because it's looking out and seeing all and feeling the whole world suffering, right? Just being asked to let go of that. Then the last decan of Capricorn is...
That's something you always talk about with me. You're always like, you feel everybody's pain. I'm like, don't let the water run. Don't let this in.
Yeah, which are valid points.
I'm like, I just care about the earth.
You're right.
But I'm always like, it's that energy. It hurts me. It hurts me.
Too much.
Yep. And that's not the frequency I want to stay beyond. I don't want to stay in that pain body.
Right.
I don't want to live in that pain body.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the last decan of Capricorn is Virgo energy, which is analysis, mercurial. Really solving things.
That's what the system is trying to.
They're trying really so rational.
It's trying so hard right now to like. We're gonna figure this out. We're gonna come back strong.
Right. And that's gonna be let go of as well.
Yeah.
You can't really figure it out.
Although, it's kind of funny because I always make fun of the system. I just have to say this because I was thinking about it today and I was feeling really humble because I always make fun of the old system, but they're actually in the process of giving me like a massive loan right now. And I'm like, that's going to really help me do good things for the planet and us do things for the planet. And so I was like, I don't know. Yeah, it's trying, and it's actually like, because I did enough to work with it. It's doing something to work with me.
Exactly.
It's like I stretched myself to fucking go through those loops, and now it's like giving back. So anyway, I don't know why I just said that. But
that makes sense. That's a great. Just having a little compassion for these energies as well can allow this energy to
and
move.
Humility and humbleness instead of always just being like, "Oh, you're such an idiot." It's like these all served purposes, and we honor them, and they, they were oppressive, but they were also helpful.
Yeah, instead of being like, "Fuck you, Dad," you can be like, "Oh, Dad," and just
exactly, and just like. I appreciate what you've done for me, but it's time to move on now. Thank you. You've served a great purpose. You've gotten me to where I am, and I honor you, and now it's time to move on. Yeah.
And when we treat this reality as not real, you have a little bit more freedom to respond to that with humility instead of fear. You have a little bit, when an offense is committed against you, you can treating it as not real allows you to just be a little bit more like bemused rather than pissed.
Yeah. Cool. So anything else? I think that's probably the most potent aspect, I think, for the eclipses.
Yeah, I suppose so. We got some other squares and stuff in here, but we got a lot of juice out of that one.
Well, there's the Saturn squared Uranus aspect that's happening all of 2021.
You've talked about that a lot.
I've talked about that a lot because it's
Neptune's squaring the sun right now. Well, it'll be squaring the sun and the moon.
That's a big one.
That is, yeah.
Well, how do you feel? What do you think that? How do you feel that represents?
Well, Neptune is deep psychic energy. Neptune is like sort of the super consciousness Neptune's the higher octave of Venus, right? So it has a lot to do with our
It's
interconnectionness at a deep level.
It's also inspiration, like awakened inspiration. Jesus Christ,
it is the romantic
conscious.
mystic, and it's in Pisces, which is its home sign.
Well, this is why we're going through a spiritual evolution currently on the planet. I think it's these tension points of the evolution of consciousness. It's like, do we believe our vision? Do we believe in it? What is tense about our vision? What is tense about what? Because there is truth. We're getting inspired. We're getting downloads. We're feeling into a new energy, but there's a tension with it.
Well, what I've noticed in our lives is there's a tension with rationality. I mean, Gemini is a heady, rational energy, and Pisces is the psychic sensitivity, and there's been a lot of those things not lining up lately.
Yes. It's that same energy of Saturn squared Uranus of like trying to figure out the balance of the intuition and the rational, and the old world and the new, and the new energies coming in. How is that going to fit into the current paradigm? They don't fit. So how is the paradigm going to shift? How are we going to shift the paradigm within ourselves, right?
Well, it's squaring. Yeah, Mercury's conjunct that eclipse as well. It's only 1 degree away, so that's even more rational mind stuff, even more discernment stuff.
But in its highest, Gemini is really about a channel. It's really a channel.
Gemini's a channel. It's also about cutting away. Gemini's discernment cuts away what's not needed.
That's true. It's also about perception. Perception, how we're perceiving the world.
Well, the glyph of Gemini is sort of an inverse of Pluto, which is interesting.
And then the entire, all those planets are, that is interesting.
Whereas the spirit is lifted above the cross, but then the crescent is on the top instead of in between as it is in Pluto. So the crescent representing the moon, representing the emotions. I mean, that's meaning like the moon is more of intuitive space, right? And that's the channel aspect of Mercury. The emotions are up above, coming through the soul, the mind, the ego, then down to the planet. Yeah, Mercury's the messenger between the intuition and matter.
So at its highest, if we were accessing the Gemini energy at its highest, we'd be able to communicate about the energy we're feeling about this current time.
Right.
That's I keep saying that because I think it's important, because I think people need to talk about this new frequency, this new energy more.
Right. You know, if Neptune and Mercury can get over their issues, Mercury can let that information through from Pisces and Neptune rather than suppressing it and contradicting it and arguing with it at every turn, because they're in these energies that really don't understand each other and sort of argue with each other and be like, that doesn't make sense and that doesn't make sense, they don't make sense to each other. But that's another sort of potential power of the ego death moment. Any of these squares can be transcended by an ego death, by one of those energies.
Yes.
One of those energies gives up and allows the energy through from the other side. And it has to have complete trust in order to do that.
Yes.
Mercury and Gemini has to completely trust Neptune and Pisces, even though it doesn't understand it at all. It has to just let go and completely trust things it doesn't understand.
That's the trick of the ego death.
To let go and trust. It's all trust.
You can't rationalize it. You just have to go with it.
And what is the trust? What really shores up the trust? It's feeling. It's just, this feels better. Yeah. It feels like a relief, and that's
even if the world may be telling you that you're irresponsible. Because that's really why we don't trust things.
Yeah.
It's almost there's a lot of guilt.
Yeah.
Shame, fear. They're all interconnected.
But if it releases the pressure off of you and relieves you of fear and all that, that's the way you want to go.
Yeah.
Right. It's just trusting that above all else, above anything rational, above anything you're trying to figure out. If all that stuff that you're rationally trying to figure out is putting weight on your shoulders and crunching you down and making you feel this pressure and crunch, that's not it. Yeah. That's not the direction you want to be going, no matter how much sense it makes.
Yes.
You want to just let go and trust, and if that feels better, that's the way you want to go.
Yeah. Nice. That was great, Alex. Thanks for your insights.
Hey.
Master astrologer over here.
Yes.
And if you guys are into our astrology, Alex and I do joint chart readings. So, because we both have different ways of doing astrology, but I think we both are astrologers separately, but we're now combining our forces and we do joint astrology readings, which really can give you extra powerhouse energy.
I feel like those are really special. Whenever we've done charts together, there's just this extra. It's not even just like a 2 + 2. It's like a 2 × 2 or like an exponential. We create this like vortex
Spiral
between us. Yeah.
That we really, because we understand the energy, and then we confirm it, and then so we can go further and further and further with it. So it's a very in-depth reading. So we have that on our Patreon page that we're creating at this moment. So just tune into that.
All right.
Alrighty, this was great. Thank y'all so much for being here, Alex.
Thank you, Chase.
It's lovely to have this time.
It always is. And thanks anyone for listening.
Thank
we love you.
Okay, bye.
We are you. You are us. And it's good times.
Yes. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.